Hi guys, it's Lisa from Green Acres. So I decided to make a quick video on tips because there's a lot of people moving and they're stuck because they can't go and actually explore the area. And I know there's a lot of people who are panicking and they want out, but they don't know what to do and they're terrified. I mean, this is a new experience for a lot of people. A lot of people don't just buy sight unseen and depend on a realtor to walk around. It's weird times. This whole thing's weird. So I thought I'd do a little video on what you could look for. Like, even considering the move, you might hear a lot of like myths and facts and stories about things like the weather or about the prices of, like the houses are cheap, which are not even that cheap right now. But, the houses are cheap and everything else is a fortune. So I guess that's really where everything comes into play. So, first of all, hydro. Hydro, well, I guess I'll talk about heating in general. So heating in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick is mainly either oil, electric, wood. You have your pellet stoves, you have your wood stoves, you have your heat pumps, you have your hot water heaters, which is usually run on like oil, electric too. And I guess those are all different things that you might not be completely comfortable with. I think a big thing when it comes down to is insulation of the house too, which is hard. You can't really even test that so much. But really, the insulation of the house is a huge thing and how much you'll pay. So, like, us versus our friends. So, our friends actually rented a house when they first moved here, way before COVID. And they were flying through the oil. They're literally every other week going through oil. And we're like, how? Because we didn't fill up our tank for the whole year and we still had like 3/4 of oil left. And our house was like 3,800 square feet and their home was like 1,400 square feet at best. So it really does depend on insulation. That's a huge thing. And that will depend on how much you pay for heat. Now, a good tip you can do is you can actually physically call the hydro company and get their average. You can get their average over the winter, you can get their average over the summer, and you can kind of figure that out. Now, I realize that it's not completely accurate because it's not you. You might be home more, you might be home less, so it might be different. But the heating aspect probably won't be that different. So if it's huge hydro bills in the winter, it's probably because they're paying a fortune in heat. So that's a good tip. I mean, you physically have no problems. If you're looking at a house and you're just questioning and looking at a house, like, you can even call and say, I'm looking at buying this house. So can you tell me the average hydro bill company? We actually did that in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and none of the places had any problems with that. So that's definitely a good tip. Oil. It is what it is. You typically get a company and they come and they fill you up and you're on a contract. Now, the good thing about heating in general is that if your house is well insulated and you say you only pay like $300 or $400 a month, and yes, it could go that high for sure for like electric heat and oil, honestly. The good part is you're only paying that through the cold time. So generally, you're only paying that amount in like December, January, and even then it might not be the peak in December. But typically, like January, February, you might be paying that, and then maybe you'll be paying a little less during like the months surrounding those. But keeping in mind, you're not paying any heat at all, and for sure by like May, June, July, August, September, you're probably not turning on your heat. And once you start paying the cost, you might not even want to turn on your heat and have to. We have our wood stove. We put a wood stove in our second house. We had a wood stove in our first house, and we love that. We actually found that with that alone, heated up the house, both of them. And we just kept oil and now electric in this house on low. Like, we kept it at 20. And if it kicked on during the night, then it's just because it was that cold. It's a little different because I think in Ontario, if you're coming from, you have natural gas most likely, and natural gas is convenient. But you're also paying that $200, $250 a month equal billing for the whole year. So it does work out to being, about the same-ish, really. What else? There is heat, water. Some of you might be getting into wells and septic. When you move, generally you request them to clean out their septic tank and get it professionally done. And then they do a little inspection too. So as long as that gets done and you get the receipt and stuff and see that was a professional company, then you don't have to worry about getting that clean for another at least 2 years, sometimes 3, depending on the tank and the amount of people there. What else? Wells, testing. You usually get the well water tested. And then think about it too. Then there's no bills for water. You don't pay bills for water. You don't pay bills for sewer. You just pay the septic. We paid about $120 in Clare for septic cleaning here because we live so much more out of the way. We paid $160 here to get our septic clean. But again, you don't have to do that for another, we'll be 2 years and we won't have to do it until then. What else? Well, you want to definitely, there's drilled and there's dug. This is a tough one. I mean, drilled well, I'm told generally you never have to worry. I have heard people say otherwise. There's just some areas that have dry seasons. Nova Scotia, where we lived in Clare last year, we knew personally a lot of people whose wells went dry. Ours never did. Ours was a drilled well. But that being said, our friends had a dug well and they never ran dry either. So I guess it just, we don't know how, I don't even know how to check the well because I've never even had to worry about that. So, definitely you can ask your neighbor how you check your well and where it goes in the level so you can get a good idea. Drilled well, I think, is best. But that's just because I was told you have less chances of it running dry. But that's good too, because you don't have to worry about all that stuff. If your well runs dry, this was the part I didn't like. You have to pay for a company to fill it. But the thing is, it doesn't just sit in there. It in a couple days, it'll just go away. So I did not like that aspect. It was like literally throwing money down the well. What else is there? Groceries. So, a tip I tell everyone when you're thinking of moving a house. So, say you have a house. You already called the hydro company. Their average bills in the winter are like $300. And then their average bills in the summer are like $90. So, you're like, okay, fine. I can deal with that. You looked at the cost, like whatever, 11 cents per kilowatt, blah, 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 and you're good with that. So whatever. We move on. Now you can Google Map the house. Walk around the neighborhood, walk around the area. It's the best way to see what's around you. You can explore the whole neighborhood. You can explore the whole community if you want. You can, when you're looking, look at the neighbors. You can see who has kids, who doesn't have kids. Maybe you want kids around you because you have kids. Maybe you don't. Maybe you hate kids. Well, you can see if that house across the street has a bunch of trampolines and playgrounds, and then maybe you don't want to live in that house then. You can just get a good feel of the neighborhood, I find, with Google Maps. I really love that they came up with what they did the years ago, especially now that you can't really just go and move somewhere. So here you are. You found a house, you Google mapped, you like it, looks cute, looks like everything you hoped for. Maybe it has everything you want. It has a couple acres of land. Maybe you have it living on the water. You want to. Make sure it's not a flood area. Make sure it doesn't have any flood history. Next thing I would do, I call insurance companies. Find out how much insurance is going to be. Make sure they're going to insure that house. Nova Scotia, I found it was a little different. They like to get more into the houses and find out, like we looked at a couple houses in Nova Scotia and we were turned right down. We were told they would not insure us. It wasn't like that in New Brunswick. It was just, okay, whatever. It's going to cost this much money. So, I guess that's a good thing to just double check. Make sure you're insured, especially if you're looking where, like New Brunswick, where it has more flood areas. Make sure it's not a flood house. Make sure you get flood insurance. If you get flood insurance, then it's because you don't have to worry. It's not a flood area. Your house is not going to flood. That's why they're giving you the insurance. It's great. Check the statistics. So if you do actually the statistics right underneath the realtor.ca website, you can see how many people are in the community. You can see an outline of the community, what it's included, how many households are in the community. I just was looking up a house for a friend. She asked me to kind of investigate. And it was like, in this big area, it was like 200 houses. And there was, so many 50 to 60, 70-year-olds. There was so many, 0 to 8-year-olds. There were so many 9 to 17-year-olds. It was pretty neat. It breaks down everything. It shows you exactly how many kids are in the area, tells you what languages they speak and what their main languages are. It tells you how many of them own houses. I mean, sometimes I see that as important too. Maybe not so much here out east, but when I was looking at houses in Ontario, I looked at how many owned. I find people, and this is not always the truth, but people who own their house and live in their house they owned tend to keep it up a bit better. As opposed to if you lived in a community where most of those homes were rented out. Right? And again, that's not always true. So don't bite my head off, YouTube. Anyways, it's just little tips. Then you want to go from there. I would suggest looking up, say, if you go to church, what churches are close by. If you want to take it further, you can go on their Facebook pages and even listen to their sermons or listen to, see what activities they do. The schools, if your kids are going to school, what school is nearby, what it's like, if that's important to you. What else is there? There's groceries. Is there grocery stores nearby? Is there a gas station nearby? I know a lot of people who move to the Valley in Nova Scotia, and I always say the Valley is a beautiful, highly seeked area. Except for but I always tell people on that note, you want to make sure there's a gas station by. We drove for a good chunk of the time, and there was no gas stations around. So you want to make sure there's a gas station. You want to make sure you can pick up that milk if it's an emergency, or you can pick up that basic need if it's important. Grocery stores. See where the grocery stores are. If you like Tim Hortons, see where that is. If you like Starbucks, see where that is. Take your lifestyle and be honest. What do you like about your lifestyle? What can you change? Can you sacrifice certain things? Can you go maybe only every 2 or 3 months to these things? If you really love Starbucks and you get Starbucks every day at work, can you do without that Starbucks now? So that's a good thing you should probably look at. If you go to a playground with your kids and you like going to a whole bunch of playgrounds and you like making that a weekly adventure, is there playgrounds close by? The one thing I've noticed about out east is they're not playgrounds here as frequent as there was in Ontario. We had a playground in Ontario every corner. In Welland, we literally had, in our little subdivision, we had 6 playgrounds and access to, at least. So, in Clare we moved, we had a playground in Meteghan, but that was the only one. So there was people all the way up to Middleton had no playground. So, you want to make sure if that's something that you like to do with your kids and they're going to miss it, can you just make a little playground in your backyard and they would be just as happy? Or is that something that you really like to do? Grab your Starbucks and go to a playground and take the kids. So you want to look out into things like that. If you like going to indoor playgrounds, is there an indoor playground close by? You want to see like movies. You go to the Cineplex Odeon. Where is it from there? Are you going to be driving an hour away to go to the movies? Is that okay? The drive-in, same deal. Like, we love going to the drive-in. That's actually one of the things we look at. We look at the movies. We look at the drive-in. We look at playgrounds. These are all things that were important to our family. And we want to make sure. We want to make sure hospitals and clinics, walk-in clinics. The interesting thing I found is that when I looked up Claire, there was a hospital in Digby, so I thought great. There was a hospital in Yarmouth, I thought great. And then there was a walk-in clinic in Clare, which was great. That was fantastic. But that was only for Clare residents, which was great because we lived in Clare. But nobody else, if you didn't live in Clare, you couldn't go there. And that's fine because we were like, well, if we moved here, we would have it, but you don't. And there was other walk-in clinics around, but there was no doctors that were in them. So that's important too. You want to make sure that there's actual doctors for these walk-in clinics. You want to make sure that there's at the hospitals in Digby and Yarmouth, there was it was recommended to call and make sure there was a doctor even on call. So these things were interesting. Like, you definitely want to look into it. If you're thinking of having babies, if you use midwives or doulas, or you use hospitals or get C-sections, all this stuff, make sure that these things are there in that area. Because, interestingly enough, they're not always accessible here, as another friend just found out. When she had her baby. It was very difficult for her to get services for midwives, and it was very difficult. The whole process was really weird. So you want to definitely check that stuff out. When you get your health... So if you're in Ontario, or if you're a Canadian citizen already... Just turn on the light. If you're a Canadian citizen already, and you have a health card, then it'll be no problem. You'll just go and move wherever, and all you do is call the community or call the 811 or the whatever number you call, and you get your health card transferred over. You just give them your information, and in like 2 or 3 months, you get your health card and you get to use it. It's not a big deal. It's really easy, actually. In Nova Scotia, I just called a number. They took all my information and they sent me a paper I had to sign. And next thing I know, in like 2 weeks, we all had our health cards. For New Brunswick, we had to we had to send in a form. We had to print out a form and we had to send it in. And again, in a couple of weeks, we had our health card. So that was easy enough. Your license, as long as you have like a G license, a full license, and you can just transfer that over as well in the new provinces. And you have to get your car safetied in the province. So in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, you have to get your car safetied, and then you can get your plates. And for us in Nova Scotia, when we were in Nova Scotia and then moved to New Brunswick, we actually didn't have to pay for plates. They just traded them. So I don't know if that's for all the provinces or if it's just an East Coast thing. But all they did is take our old plates from New Brunswick and they traded us and we didn't have to pay. So that was good. We just had to pay for the safety, which we have a brand new van now, so we weren't worried about that aspect. What else? So you're thinking of moving, you found a house you liked, you checked out their stores, you decided, I like that, you looked at clubs, that's another thing. Check out what's there, like if your kids are in scouts, if your kids like hockey, then, make sure all that stuff's running. Libraries have good programs too. If you're a homeschooler like us, check out the homeschooling information. It's a little bit different than Ontario. In Nova Scotia, you have to email them your intent. They have blank intent things. It's actually more a thing than just, oh, my kid's this age and this grade and they're homeschooling now. So in Nova Scotia, you do have to fill out forms of more what you're doing for homeschooling. It's definitely a bit more vigorous. I don't want to say it's difficult. It really wasn't difficult. And then at the end of the year, you do a little report card, which was fine for me because we actually do a report card in a ways, regardless. But for some people in Ontario, that might be different. New Brunswick, I don't really have the information here. I think you just, from what I've seen, you just send the letter out to similar, it looks like the Ontario one. And then I think that's it, but don't really count me on that one yet. I still have to figure it out. We just figured I was already signed up for Nova Scotia, so I just left it with Nova Scotia for now, whatever. And plus, like, tons of people are homeschooling right now, regardless. And I think those are really the big things. If you want, like, weather, you can check out weather. It's not very hard to look on Google to see average weather. Like, for Nova Scotia, in the southern, eastern side where we were between Yarmouth and Digby, we have, that was a big, huge myth buster right there. The snow is, like, non-existent there. What they call a snowstorm, I kind of chuckled because living in Narrow Falls area, we got huge ice storms and lots of ice, and we had lots of snowstorms, and especially like from the Buffalo border. So living in Clare in Nova Scotia, there was like no snow, and it was not cold, and it was actually quite beautiful. Of course, we had the odd snow, but nothing like. But New Brunswick, there was snow. We had quite a bit of snow. Apparently this wasn't a bad winter, which I could see that. It was actually pretty mild. There was a couple weeks where it'd be like in the negative 18s or negative even 20 we hit. And that's fine. I mean, it's winter. You expect that. There was a lot of snow, though. From Christmas on, we didn't see green at all. So definitely check out your weather. Check out your area. Make sure you can handle it. So we just finally, like, our last bit of snow left maybe under a month for sure. We were just driving around like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you could still see patches of snow. So right now, though, it's been like 20 degrees Celsius, which is completely abnormal, but I'm okay with that. That's cool. So check the weather. You can go on Google and you can check the average weathers. You can check the average snowfall. You can check the average rainfall. You can check anything. Like, it's not as scary as you think buying online. I think that when you, even going there, you can get a good feel of the house, but you can't get a good feel of the neighbors. You can't get a good feel of always how warm it's going to be or how cold, like how cold it's going to be, how lack of insulation. You can obviously feel that in some aspects, but you never really truly know until you move there anyways. And you never truly really know the neighbors until you move there anyways. So don't be too scared, as long as you check and see, get an inspector through if you want, I think it's a little easier too. Most Ontario people or Quebec, or BC people or whatever out west, they have a little bit of a nest egg after selling their house and then moving here. So that's a little more comfortable too. Like my friend said, moving here, the biggest expenditures would be the septic. And if they already have a septic tank and they just need to replace it, then it's not as bad. A well. If they have a well, then that's great, as long as, like, the water's not polluted for some reason. A roof, but even a roof, don't be scared of a roof. You need to redo a roof. Unless you don't have any money at all, then obviously you might want to be scared. The foundation, I think that's the main thing. If the foundation's good bones, the rest you can do with time. And if you don't really like it, once you move there, after giving it a little bit of a chance, then don't be scared of finding your dream house after that. It's such a weird time right now. I really feel for you guys, that you are in this situation and probably never bought a house 3 or 4 provinces, 5 provinces, 6 provinces over, and didn't just buy a house online, not even going to the area before. But there's a lot of stuff out there to help you. Don't be scared of it. Check online, research. There's a lot of Facebook pages. There's like Escape to New Brunswick. There's a now Escape to Nova Scotia kind of version, moving to Nova Scotia. There's even like Moms in Nova Scotia, Moms in New Brunswick, things like that. So use them, utilize them, contact the local libraries, ask them questions, contact bylaws around for that area, and ask them questions. If you want chickens, make sure you can have chickens, Don't just assume you can. If you want, to build a fence, make sure you can build a fence. Or, make sure that you can live there without building a fence. It's one thing you guys might notice, especially moving from Ontario. A lot of Ontario people like their fences. So, moving here, you might find it a little weird. Nobody has fences here. Probably because the properties are so big and they all used to be family and they're all still family. So they just don't even see the need. Fences are pretty expensive. So if you're going to get a fence, make sure you can put a fence up. Make sure you're not going to stand out and people think you're a snob and not talk to you. Anyways, guys, I wish you all the luck. If you're looking for a house online right now or you've been considering it, if you ever have any questions or concerns or you want a little bit more guidance, I'm here to help. There's so many places and people on Facebook and that are there and willing to help you. Get hooked up with a good realtor. Sometimes I think they've gotten a little better, but initially the realtors weren't really taking people serious from coming from elsewhere. I think they were used to people looking and then just not really following through. But now it's turned a little different. I think now they're starting to take us very seriously now. And they realize that we are coming and we're being serious and we're offering cash offers and we're buying sight unseen. This is happening. There is bidding wars going on. Houses here have literally doubled and tripled from what they were last year. And that's all a little scary too. So take that all in consideration too. If COVID starts dying down and people decide, I kind of miss my family and friends, which some of them inevitably will those houses sell easily? Something to take in consideration too. So, anyways, folks, I hope this helped a little bit. I have so many more tips, so many more things, but I've already been gabbing for a long time. 27 minutes and 59 seconds. 28 minutes now. I think this is the longest video I've done thus far. But the kids aren't here, so it's been nice. Bye, everyone. Make sure you subscribe. And Facebook. We're on, it's Green Mountain Acres, I think, but I just type in Green Acres. I'll put the thing right in the bottom. Like us, subscribe subscribe us, follow our Facebook page. I'm doing little blogs and little diary things all the time. I post little funny memes, and we are doing a lot of things. We're going to be building chicken coops and fencing, and that's all going to be documented. We've already started. So, have a good day, guys.